In Korea, people with tattoos are all dangerous, but they are nothing to fear for this scarred man. However, this young man with dyed hair who didn't know how to live or die wanted to show off in front of him. But in the blink of an eye, the dagger in his hand was snatched away by the other party. The lightning speed completely scared the young man with dyed hair, but the fat man next to him was still unconvinced. I thought that in the face of absolute power, speed was not worth mentioning at all. When the fat man was about to challenge, the window upstairs was violently hit the next second. When the camera returned to the house, the fat man had already fallen to the ground. However, such a powerful man was hiding in the slums and living a decadent life. Just because Cha Tai-sik was unkempt and alone all day, the neighbors looked at him strangely. But Cha Tai-sik never paid attention, as if the trivialities of the world had nothing to do with him. The only person who had some intersection with him was the little girl Jong So-mi from the neighbor's house. Every time she met Cha Tai-sik, Jong So-mi always followed him and chattered non-stop. But he never talked to her, and even seemed a little annoyed with her. But after Cha Tai-sik learned that Jong So-mi had not eaten for a day, he would quietly cook a delicious meal for Jong So-mi. After Cha Tai-sik learned that Jong So-mi was abandoned by her father since she was a child, and could only depend on her mother who had no formal job. Perhaps out of sympathy for Jong So-mi's tragic life experience, Cha Tai-sik picked up a piece of sausage for Jong So-mi for the first time to comfort her. In order to thank Cha Tai-sik for his hospitality, Jong So-mi left a yellow smiley face on Cha Tai-sik's nails before going home. But Cha Tai-sik could not take care of Jong So-mi all the time. In order to solve her own food and clothing problem, Jong So-mi, who was often hungry, was forced to take the road of stealing. One day, Jong So-mi stole a school bag and was caught by the owner on the street. While the angry owner kept cursing her, her child kept hitting Jong So-mi's head with the school bag. Then the other party threatened Jong So-mi to call her parents over. This made Jong So-mi, who had never been loved by anyone, instantly full of panic and anxiety on her face. It happened that at this time, the neighbor Cha Tai-sik passed by here, and Jong So-mi quickly pointed her finger at him. Jong So-mi wanted Cha Tai-sik to pretend to be her father to save her, but just as she was waiting expectantly, Cha Tai-sik turned around and left when he saw the police. Jong So-mi was left standing there with loneliness and helplessness in her eyes, which further confirmed that she was a wild child who was not loved by anyone. When they met again in the evening, Cha Tai-sik carefully asked Jong So-mi if she was still angry with him. Hearing his words, Jong So-mi burst into tears, but before Cha Tai-sik could explain, she was very sensible and gave Cha Tai-sik her favorite night card. Then, she said in a comforting tone, that it was okay because she had been bullied since she was a child. She had been used to all this for so many years, although she was a little dissatisfied with Cha Tai-sik at this time, but she didn't want to lose the only person in the world who was good to her. Jong So-mi's heartfelt words entangled the fate of the two. Jong So-mi, who had just arrived home that night, unexpectedly found that the door of the house was open. She knew that her mother would always close the door in the past and enjoy the short pleasure in the room. Every time she was scared by her mother's overly excited screams, she often hid in a corner and tried to cover her ears. However, this time she walked into the room and saw that her mother was tied up and placed in the middle of the living room. The kidnappers not only provoked her in a weird way, but also pressed a high-temperature hairdryer on her legs. The reason why she was treated so cruelly was that Jong So-mi's mother, who was a dancer in the dance hall, accidentally picked up 2 bags of contraband from the local drug lord in the room where she worked. She was already addicted and took the 2 bags of contraband for herself. As a result, the drug lord found out and chased her home. The person who was torturing her was Jong Seok, the second in command of the local drug lord Man Seok. At first, Jong So-mi's mother was still stubborn and refused to confess, but she couldn't stand the cruelty of Jong Seok, the pervert. Soon she couldn't resist and told the whereabouts of the contraband. It turned out that she hid the contraband in a camera bag and deposited it in the pawnshop of her neighbor, Cha Tai-sik. On the same night, when Cha Tai-sik returned home, he found that the lock of his door had been pried open. At this time, Jong Seok's 2 younger brothers in the house had been waiting for a long time. Seeing him come back, the dyed-haired young man took out a dagger. At first, Cha Tai-sik mistakenly thought that he had encountered 2 thugs who broke into the house and robbed him. He was ready to hand over all the wallets in his hand. However, the dyed-haired young man said that these were not the things he needed, and threatened that if he didn't hand them over, he would be in trouble. Cha Tai-sik saw that they were going to take real action, so he simply took the initiative. Cha Tai-sik suddenly made a move and quickly snatched the dagger from his hand. Then he sternly warned the 2 to know what was good for them and left immediately. However, the dyed-haired young man's accomplices refused to cooperate and were arrogant. It wasn't long before the commotion upstairs alerted Jong-seok downstairs. So Jong-seok asked his personal bodyguard Ram-rowan to go upstairs to take a look. Ram-rowan, who went upstairs, only looked at Cha Tae-sik. He realized that he was not an ordinary person. Before the two of them fought, Jong-seok called. Then Ram-rowan handed the connected phone to Cha Tae-sik. Jong-seok threatened Cha Tae-sik with a smirk on the phone. If the camera bag containing contraband is not handed over, Jong So-mi and her mother will die in a short time. Cha Tae-sik instantly wanted to kill him after hearing this. But in order to ensure the safety of Jong So-mi and the other person, Cha Tae-sik threw the camera bag to the other party as soon as possible. After confirming that the contraband was fine, Ram-rowan left a mobile phone as instructed by Jong-seok and retreated. As for where Jong So-mi was, he did not explain. When Cha Tae-sik realized something was wrong and chased downstairs, he only saw Jong So-mi tied up and taken away in a car. Cha Tae-sik chased the car like crazy, and at this moment, he only hated himself for not running fast enough. Until the car carrying Jong So-mi gradually went away and then disappeared completely. Cha Tae-sik realized that he was fooled by the other party, and he returned home in anger. After hesitating for a moment, he still called the police. However, when the police heard that it was related to the local drug lord, they refused Cha Tae-sik's report because they were afraid of causing trouble. At this time, Ram-rowan's mobile phone left in the room rang. When Cha Tae-sik picked up the phone, Jong-seok's slightly playful voice came again. He threatened the lives of Jong So-mi and her daughter, as long as Cha Tae-sik could help deliver a batch of contraband. They can return the two mother and daughter safely, and Jong So-mi's mother will be forgiven for stealing contraband. In order to save Jong So-mi, Cha Tae-sik had to agree, but he fell into the trap of the two brothers. Cha Tae-sik first found a car according to the prompt of the mobile phone text message, and then found a key in the passenger seat of the car. Then, according to the prompt, he used the key to open a locker with a toy car. The inside of the car was a bag of contraband. According to the prompt of the text message, Cha Tae-sik found the contact person, Boss Woo. At first, Boss Woo thought he was here to discuss business, so he warmly entertained him. However, Cha Tae-sik, who was in a hurry to save people, took out the contraband directly and asked Boss Woo to quickly release Jong So-mi and her daughter. Just when Boss Woo was confused, Man-seok called. It turned out that Man-seok accidentally lost the contraband a few days ago, and in anger, Boss Woo slapped him in public. This made Man-seok, who was already dissatisfied with him, immediately want to kill him, so he pretended to let Cha Tae-sik take the contraband to trade. But he secretly called the police behind his back so that he could kill two birds with one stone. Not only could he get rid of Cha Tae-sik, but he could also send Boss Woo to jail. At this time, the police had surrounded the place, and Boss Woo, who realized that he was being fooled, was so angry that he almost fainted. He picked up the bag of contraband and smashed it directly on Cha Tae-sik's face, and then his men rushed over. He planned to teach him a lesson, and the crazy beating made Cha Tae-sik spit blood. But now is not the time to entangle with him. Boss Woo planned to throw him to the police and withdraw immediately. Then Cha Tae-sik was thrown down from the building by his men. Fortunately, Cha Tae-sik did not land directly on the ground, but landed on the protective net under the building. When Cha Tae-sik came to his senses, he found that Boss Woo was trying to escape the scene. He immediately pulled out the dagger he carried with him and decisively cut through the protective net. Then he jumped directly on Boss Woo's car, scaring the other party to reverse and throw him to the ground. However, at this moment, a large number of police cars had blocked the intersection. Seeing this, Cha Tae-sik quickly got on his own car. He knew that this dirty deal had nothing to do with him. At this moment, the only thought in his mind was to rescue Jong So-mi and her daughter. Cha Tae-sik drove the car directly to stop Boss Woo's car. Seeing Boss Woo trying to escape after getting out of the car, Cha Tae-sik immediately got out of the car and prepared to chase him. However, when his eyes fell on his trunk, the whole person froze in place. Not only Cha Tae-sik, but even the police who came couldn't bear to look. It turned out that the trunk of the car Jong-seok gave him had been filled with the body of Jong So-mi's mother. And the body was hollow. The organs had been emptied out long ago. Then, Cha Tae-sik was taken back to the police station for questioning, and he became the #1 suspect without any surprise. Facing the police's questioning, Cha Tae-sik remained silent because he was worried about Jong So-mi's situation all the time. Until he saw the night card Jong So-mi gave him in his wallet, Cha Tae-sik realized that he couldn't waste time like this anymore. Just when a policeman helped him open the handcuffs, he seized the opportunity and quickly started to fight back. It took only more than 4 minutes to knock down the 6 policemen in the police station. Then, Cha Tae-sik disappeared in the dark night. On the other side, Jung So-mi was taken into a smelly basement where countless children of her age were imprisoned. They all had messy hair, dull eyes, and were skinny. Fortunately, Jung So-mi soon made new friends. To express her affection, Jung So-mi even painted a smiley face on her friend's nails. Unexpectedly, a few days later, her friend was taken away in the name of being found home. Jung So-mi was happy that she could go home. However, what she didn't know was that her friend was sent to the guillotine. The so-called finding home was actually finding a buyer for her organs. It turned out that the Man-seok brothers not only resold contraband, but also secretly engaged in the business of trafficking children's organs. Anyway, as long as they can make money, they will definitely do anything, even to the point of being crazy. Not long after, Jung So-mi's mother's boyfriend also fell into their hands. Jung Seok wanted to know if there was someone behind Jung So-mi's mother stealing their contraband. However, before the other party could speak, Man-seok sent him to paradise with an axe. The reason was that their lunchboxes had been delivered, and if they continued to talk nonsense with him, the lunchboxes would get cold and would not taste good. Then the two of them calmly ate and talked beside the corpse, and even Boss Woo, who had escaped last time, was killed by Ramroan, one of the brothers. On the other side, in order to find the whereabouts of Jung So-mi, Cha Tae-sik found a store that specialized in selling such mobile phones based on the mobile phone left by Ramroan last time. Cha Tae-sik wanted to know who the buyer of this mobile phone was, but the boss, who didn't know the man in front of him, tried to be vague and perfunctory. As a result, in less than a minute, all his men were knocked to the ground by Cha Tae-sik. Finally, under the threat of the glaring dagger, the cowardly boss panicked and handed Cha Tae-sik his business card and told him about their organ trafficking. Soon, Cha Tae-sik followed the clues and came to the nightclub of the brothers. Unexpectedly, he met Man-seok as soon as he entered the door. Although the two of them had never met, the alert Man-seok still sensed the danger and quickly called Jong-seok. He told him through code that he had better leave quickly. On the other side, Cha Tae-sik, who was unaware of the situation, continued to look for people. Although he failed to find the two brothers, he soon found the dyed-haired young man who had met him once before. Knowing that he was powerful, the dyed-haired young man wanted to take out a dagger to resist, but was directly stabbed in the shoulder. Cha Tae-sik just wanted to know where Jung So-mi was sent. At first, the dyed-haired young man wanted to be stubborn, but he soon explained where Jung So-mi was. She had been sent to a place where organs were sold by the brothers. Only the two brothers knew whether she was dead or alive. Cha Tae-sik didn't want to waste time with him, so he held him with a dagger and went out to find someone. Unexpectedly, he met Ramroan, who came just after leaving the room. He picked up a pistol and started shooting. Cha Tae-sik escaped with his flexible body, but the dyed-haired young man walking in front was hit by several bullets and was beaten to a bloody mess. Seeing that Cha Tae-sik, who entered the toilet, had disappeared, Ramroan began to shoot at each pit with a gun. Seeing the movement inside, he carefully pushed the door open to check, but he didn't expect that there was an innocent girl inside. At this time, Cha Tae-sik suddenly attacked from behind, and then the two of them started a fierce confrontation in the small toilet. The two fought back and forth for a while, and Ramroan picked up the pistol on the ground again and shot Cha Tae-sik in the struggle. At the critical moment, the bullets in the gun were used up. Cha Tae-sik completely ignored the gunshot wound on his body and rushed into the dance floor with a sharp axe. Ramroan, who was confronting him, was no ordinary man. He immediately drew out his machete and took a fighting stance. Unexpectedly, Man-seok suddenly appeared at this time. It turned out that he saw the police nearby. Cha Tae-sik realized that this guy was not a good person. Man-seok threw him a mobile phone and turned away. When Cha Tae-sik picked up the phone and ran out of the door, he saw the arrogant brothers passing by him. Cha Tae-sik, who was shot, chased after him with an axe, but he could only watch the other party disappear in front of him. When he found a parked car on the side of the road, Cha Tae-sik walked up with an axe, and it was too late when the police arrived. On the way, Cha Tae-sik received another call from Man-seok. He just wanted to know the safety of Jung So-mi at this time. Man-seok didn't say it directly, but just said that Jung So-mi is too young now and her organs are not mature yet, and only the cornea can be sold. This instantly ignited the anger in Cha Tae-sik's heart. Cha Tae-sik didn't want to continue to entangle with Man-seok, and bluntly asked the two brothers to prepare the cemetery in advance. Seeing that his injuries were getting worse and worse, Cha Tae-sik found his former good brother, who used red-hot tweezers to search for the bullet in his body. Cha Tae-sik, who didn't have any anesthesia, was heartbroken by the pain. In his blurred consciousness, his thoughts seemed to have returned to the past. 6 years ago, his real identity was an agent who specialized in handling some difficult incidents for the government. After learning that his wife was pregnant, he wanted to quit his job to accompany his wife, but he didn't know that he would be attracted by a baby store on the way to accompany his wife for a prenatal checkup again, and then went in to choose shoes for the unborn child. When walking out of the store, Cha Tai-sik received a call and signaled his wife to wait for him in the car. Unexpectedly, a truck crashed into the car where his wife was in the next second. Cha Tai-sik was stunned when he saw this scene. Then the other party took out a gun and started shooting at him. Fortunately, a good brother who passed by shot and killed the other party, which saved Cha Tai-sik's life. But since then, Cha Tai-sik has been completely devastated and hid under an assumed name, wanting to end his life. Many years later, the appearance of Jong So-mi, the neighbor next door, reminded Cha Tai-sik of his unborn child again. He fantasized more than once that if the child was still alive, he should be as old as Jong So-mi. In his relationship with Jong So-mi, he felt the long-lost warmth, so he slowly opened up his long-sealed heart. After waking up from the coma, he secretly vowed that he had failed to save his wife and children before. But this time, he must save Jong So-mi from the hands of those scumbags. Even if he was torn to pieces, he would make those scumbags pay with blood. After a few days of rest, Cha Tai-sik finally recovered his strength. Cha Tai-sik shaved his decadent long hair in front of the mirror and stared at the front with wolf-like eyes. Then he changed into a black suit, skillfully checked the pistol, and drew the sword. It was time to punish those unscrupulous scumbags. Investigation and tracking is a compulsory course for professional agents. Soon, Cha Tai-sik found the small toy car that he had taken the contraband from at the place where the gangsters often appeared. Cha Tai-sik opened it and saw that it was full of contraband. After a few days of squatting, he finally saw the person who took the contraband. Those young children were forced out by the Man-seok brothers to transfer the contraband. From taking the contraband to delivering the contraband to withdrawing cash from the card, all were done by these children. Through tracking, Cha Tai-sik quickly found a store. When he went in, he saw that there was no one, but he quickly found a cabinet through the footprints on the ground. Cha Tai-sik opened it and found that there was a secret door inside. The scene in front of Cha Tai-sik, who quietly entered inside, made him dumbfounded instantly. Those young children were forced to produce contraband here. If a child fainted on the ground because of being too tired, Jong-seok would directly let his men carry him away to remove the cornea. Cha Tai-sik found a room while following, which was where they used to take organs. In the refrigerator next to it, the first layer was the dead boss Woo, and the second layer was the girl who was taken away in front of Jong So-mi. Seeing the same smiley face on the nails, Cha Tai-sik instantly overflowed with murderous intent. The fat man in charge of anesthesia just felt someone behind him, and Cha Tai-sik behind him didn't say anything, but waved his hand to signal the girl to leave. Then Cha Tai-sik shot the fat man in the next second, and the sound of a gunshot completely broke the tranquility here. Jong-seok, who realized something was wrong, was knocked to the ground before he could escape. Maybe he never dreamed that someone would walk on his head in this life. Seeing the beast in front of him, Cha Tai-sik's eyes were full of murderous intent. Then, Man-seok outside received a call. At first, he didn't know who called until he heard his brother's heartbreaking screams. It turned out that Cha Tai-sik had nailed his legs full of nails. At first, Man-seok arrogantly said that if he dared to touch his brother again, Man-seok would directly ask someone to dig out Jong So-mi's eyes. As a result, he heard his brother's scream like a pig being slaughtered again in just 1 second. After hanging up the phone, Cha Tai-sik brought a whole bag of contraband and then hung it on the oil lamp with a rope and cut off the gas pipe. Because Cha Tai-sik had never thought of exchanging with Man-seok, facing such a thing worse than pigs and dogs, it was a luxury for him to keep a whole body. Until this moment, Jong-seok's face was still full of arrogance, and he said coldly that if he dared to kill him, he would never see Jong So-mi again. Cha Tai-sik was too lazy to talk nonsense with him, and directly cut open the bag of contraband and then left. Jong-seok, who realized the danger, began to shout desperately. When the contraband in the bag was gone, the oil lamp at the other end fell directly to the ground. The next second, the whole room exploded violently, and even the shops outside were instantly ablaze. Finally, Cha Tai-sik gave the phone to the rescued children, and soon the police found the room where the children were locked up, but Jong So-mi was not there. At this time, she was in an ambulance. In order to avenge his brother, Man-seok ordered his men to dig out Jong So-mi's eyeballs directly, but this time Ram-rowan had his own ideas. Not long after, Cha Tai-sik broke into Man-seok's hall alone. Manseok didn't expect this guy to come to the door like this. Seeing him so persistent in looking for Jong So-mi, Manseok still looked arrogant, and then rolled a glass jar with eyeballs in front of Cha Tae-sik. This was like 1,000 cuts for Cha Tae-sik. He had found this place with great difficulty, but he didn't expect to be given such a big gift as soon as he met. His anger instantly reached its peak. Seeing him lying on the ground in pain, Manseok still ignorantly said that Jong So-mi had gone to heaven to find her mother. At this moment, he still wanted to know where his brother was, but the next second, Cha Tae-sik quickly took out his gun and started shooting indiscriminately. After a gunfight, most of the minions in front of him were killed or injured. Even the frightened minions were shot away by Cha Tae-sik without hesitation. Now Cha Tae-sik has no worries. The only thought in his mind is killing. Seeing him fighting so fiercely in the crowd, Ram Rowan, who came, did not rush to shoot. The minions were like ants in front of Cha Tae-sik. They were all knocked to the ground in a few breaths. However, when Cha Tae-sik was about to take the bottle, Ram Rowan shot the bottle into pieces. After failing to determine the winner in the nightclub last time, both sides were determined to fight to the death this time. On the other side, Manseok was frantically packing money to run away. Whether he could successfully run away depended entirely on the time of the duel between Cha Tae-sik and Ram Rowan. Originally, the two were equally skilled, but at this time, Cha Tae-sik's anger value had already been filled, and he was invincible compared to the power of cold-blooded revenge. After several rounds of fierce confrontation, Ram Rowan, who was at a disadvantage, was stabbed in the chest and finally had to sit on the ground in submission. On the other side, Manseok, who was about to escape, had just started the car, and one of his men was shot dead before he got in the car. Manseok, who was still in shock, stepped on the accelerator in a hurry, as if he was going to pierce the entire fuel tank. But before he could run far, Cha Tae-sik shot the tire. Then he lost control and crashed directly into the vehicle next to him, before he could start again. Cha Tae-sik blew up another tire, and Manseok had no choice but to call the police. However, before he could get through, Cha Tae-sik had already reached the roof of his car. Cha Tae-sik wanted to shoot him to death, but Manseok in the car was fine. Only then did he realize that the car he was riding in was bulletproof. This made him arrogant again, and he began to threaten Cha Tae-sik outside the car. However, Cha Tae-sik didn't talk nonsense with him, but directly used a pistol to shoot at the same point. In just a few seconds, Cha Tae-sik had scared Manseok in the car. He looked at the hole in the window with horror. Before Manseok could dodge, he was shot in the body, and then Cha Tae-sik shot him to death in his screams. At this point, the criminal gang of the Manseok brothers was completely wiped out, but killing all these beasts who deserved to die did not satisfy Cha Tae-sik. The death of his wife and children once plunged him into darkness, and he was powerless. Now the death of Jong So-mi made him feel miserable for the second time. Desperate, he replaced the magazine and pointed the gun at himself. Just as he was about to pull the trigger, a familiar call came from behind. Seeing Jong So-mi intact, his eyes instantly turned red. In order not to scare the child, he carefully hid the pistol behind him. However, Jong So-mi ran towards him regardless, and then hugged his body tightly, and kept asking Cha Tae-sik repeatedly, "Is he here to save her?" At this moment, endless longing made him burst into tears, and soon the police arrived at the scene to clean up the mess. Jong So-mi also told the reason why he survived. It turned out that he felt sorry for the injured Ram Rowan and put a band-aid on his wound. Jong So-mi was saved by Ram Rowan when her eyes were gouged out, and those eyes actually belonged to the doctor who was going to dig out her eyes. On the way to the police station, Cha Tae-sik bought a school bag and school supplies for Jong So-mi in the store. That time, Jong So-mi was insulted in the street for stealing a school bag, and Cha Tae-sik did not lend a helping hand when he saw it. Now preparing these for Jong So-mi before going to prison is a little compensation for her. The Man from Nowhere is directed by Lee Jeong-beom, starring Hyun Bin and Kim Se-ron, a crime-action movie released in 2010. When the prison door slowly closed, Cha Tae-sik and Jong So-mi looked at each other silently through the glass. This movie, torn by violence and tenderness, finally completed the torture of the ultimate proposition in the tears of the audience. Is violence an abyss or a ladder? How much blood does redemption need to cleanse the soul? Well, today's movie sharing ends here. Welcome to like, comment, and forward. Thank you for your patience in watching. Looking forward to meeting you next time.